Hello and welcome back to another edition of TOCA Backstage. It is my honor to have John Tesh with us today. John will be performing his acoustic Christmas show coming up on February, or excuse me, that would be stupid, December 6th, 2019 at 8 p.m. It's a Friday night at the Armstrong Theater. We hope you all will join us. John, thank you so much for taking the time. I certainly do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Just looking over your Wikipedia page, I don't know how you make time for even 2 seconds of talking.
Well, you know what's funny about the Wikipedia page is that it looks like I have really bad ADD. It's sort of like why didn't this guy just sort of settle on something? But it's I have some great people who work with me. That's really what it is. But I also it's a much longer story, but 4 years ago in May, I was given 18 months to live. So, and I came out on the other side of it, ended up being healed from a terminal cancer diagnosis. So, I don't mind being busy. It means
wow, I did not. That is definitely not on your Wikipedia page.
It's not. I should probably put it on there, but and one of the reasons we kept it sort of quiet was that we got 300 radio stations, and and it was like, I love these guys. They're great, but I wouldn't want them to say, well, he's not going to be around for too much longer. Let's put in Flippy Danny and the Weasel to replace his radio show.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
That's awesome.
That works.
So yeah, I have to say, 6 Emmys, 2 Grammys, and again, forgive me if I miss anything, but this is on your Wikipedia page. 8 million records sold. You've hosted Entertainment Tonight. You've actually been a sportscaster for the Olympics, Tour de France. It's like Ryan Seacrest has nothing on you. What a varied and amazing background you have.
It has, it's been a fun life, and it's really odd too because I spent a good bit of my youth with really bad stage fright. When I was and the reason a lot of these stories are forward in my hippocampus is that I'm just about finished with a memoir that HarperCollins wanted me to write, and I think the reason they wanted me to write it was because of the way I got healed from cancer. But it's a memoir of really from when I was about 6 years old, and it was, first of all, I was horribly unpopular. The person you're seeing now is, I'm 6'6" and I weigh 221 pounds, and it's sort of my fighting weight. But when I was in junior high school, I was this height, 6'6", and I weighed 155. And I had braces, and I smelled of Clearasil because I had acne. So really the only thing for me to do was to play piano and study trumpet and be in the orchestras and be a band geek, which wasn't all that popular back in the day. And that ended up being just a big blessing for me. And it was, I learned what focused deep work practice was, and it's there's been some bumps along the way, but it stayed with me.
That's amazing. It's, well, going back to your music, what inspired you to get into, obviously from what you said, you were shy and so you focused on music, but how did you take the next step? How did you get over that stage fright to actually be in front of millions of people?
I tried to muscle my way through it, and it really didn't work. And what happened was, and I have 3 grandkids now that are not as loud as your leaf blower, but
and again, I apologize.
No, it's all good. Mine's coming soon. But I tell their parents, my son, and his wife, I say, listen, don't do the recital thing. It's really 6, 7 years old. I had Mrs. Andriani was, and the teachers, God bless them, they want to show off with all the work that they've done. And so,
sure.
But when you get up there, if you have any fear at all, once you miss a note, it's so bad. And so it was hard for me, and it followed me all the way through doing book reports and any of that stuff. It was just, and it followed me all the way through college. And even though I was playing in garage bands and I played organ in in dance bands in junior high and high school, it was always like this. I didn't look up. I just like I just stayed with the keyboard, and so that'll also make you really popular. But when I got out of out of college, and really, I guess must have been like 27, 28 years old, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to tour or do anything or even be in a recording studio, basically, if I didn't get rid of it. And so I found which I highly recommend. I found a guy who specializes in stage fright and worked with solo violinists and opera singers and pianists, and he worked with me for 2 years. And there were some basic techniques. I'm actually writing about this in the book. Things like practicing failing, making mistakes, and then how you're going to get out of it. Is it going to be a facial expression? You can't start over, which is what you do usually when you're a kid. That's why those recitals are so long. Is to go back and start at the beginning. And then there's the other thing, and I still use this technique to this day, where we have concerts coming up, and obviously, and I will have. So when you come to the acoustic Christmas show, and you're sitting in one of those seats, I will have sat in that seat. I sit in pretty much all the seats about noon, and I meet everybody in the concert hall. All of the stage hands, the people who sell the tickets, all of it, and the coffee shop around the corner and everything. So that's my living room. You're coming into my house, right? And so when I walk out on stage, I'm totally comfortable, and I don't really have to do it anymore because it's now a muscle for me. But as a ritual, you can ask my guys. Scotty Myers, our tour manager, he'll tell you I still do that. And so there is life on the other side of stage fright. And by the way, stage fright, right, manifests itself not only on stage, but asking a woman out, doing a book report, being in a conference room and speaking up. You can use those techniques for any of that.
Well, that's good to hear that there's a way out. I know when I was in high school, I was a performing magician, and I invited somebody up and did an arm chopping routine, and the thing got stuck, so they had to walk off with my arm guillotine, and I think that sort of shut me down from performing ever again. It was like really embarrassing, but so I need to find those people. Right,
and it's like you have to do the Navy SEAL thing, right? So Navy SEALs won't go into you're helping me write this chapter. This is good. The Navy SEALs won't go into an assault into a building without, I think it's like 4 or 5 different exits. So had you said, well, this is one of the things that can possibly happen, and had you had an exit, you could have gone with them off stage. I don't know. You would have come out with something in there, and it wouldn't still be haunting you to this day.
Music is one part of your life, but also there's the newscaster, the sportscaster, and the entertainment personality. How did you find your way into Entertainment Tonight and Olympic sportscasting?
Yeah, a lot of it is just sort of saying yes and just going. When I was, this is also not on the Wikipedia page, but when I was 20 years old, I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a performer my whole life, even though I wasn't comfortable doing it. It was just something that was in me. So I was always making little films. I made a film, where I suspended my cat with a coat hanger on a clothesline and flew her through the air with some fishing line. It was Tippy Goes to Mars. I was always doing little things for the kids in the basement at Halloween. I always wanted to do that, but my dad was convinced, World War II veteran, was convinced that I'd starve to death if I went to music school. So he enrolled me in textile chemistry at North Carolina State because he was the vice president of the underwear division of Hanes, and so he wanted me to carry on the underwear mantle in the family, and that lasted until I was about a junior at NC State, and then I took a radio television course, and it lit me up, and so I said I got to change my major, and I went around to all of my professors and sort of pleaded my case. I was after the drop ad. time. And they all said, yeah, we can see that, this is something you really want to do. And so they signed the thing, but my statistics professor wouldn't sign it, saying that, it's university rules, whatever. So I had a dorm mate who said, there's 120 kids in the class. Just do what I do. I drop classes all the time. And I said, well, what's that? He goes, you just sign the professor's name. Don't worry about it. And and when I tell this story on stage, you can hear from the audience, because they're thinking I would never do that. I did, and things were fine for a couple of weeks until my report card came. A report card didn't come. It was a letter from the university saying that I had broken the honor code from the chancellor. I had broken the honor code, and I'd been given an F for the course, and they were suspending me indefinitely from the university. And that wasn't even the worst part of it. My dad decided that I had shamed him. I had shamed my mom's bridge club. I had shamed the Hanes Underwear division. And so he kicked me out of the house. So at 20 years old, I was in my Volkswagen with a pup tent on the top, drove from Winston-Salem, where my parents were living, to Raleigh, and I lived in a park for 6 months under an overpass. I was a homeless person digging ditches for C.C. Mangum Construction Company, and I was pumping gas for college Esso. It was Esso back then. I realized that the only way to get out of that was to make a fake demo tape, and since I was already a radio demo tape, I was already a criminal. I broke into the campus radio station, and I did I was like, hey, this is John Tesh. Here's a helicopter traffic report, and I did this is correspondent Maurice Gindey in Cairo. Henry Kissinger had this to say about the possibility of peace in the Middle East. I think there's a possibility of peace in the Middle East, and like a little piano, it was John Tesh, WKIX 2020 News. And I turned the reel-to-reel tape into this guy who I still keep in touch with, Scott White. This is 1973. Who was the news director at WKIX, the Rick D station. And he said, did you make all these noises and all this stuff on here? And I said, yeah. He goes, listen, if you want a job that bad, I'll give you a job. So I had the job of playing the religious tapes on Sundays at 4 o'clock in the morning. And since I was already a criminal, I would take a razor blade after about 2 hours of this madness, and I would make a little notch in the tape. And then the tape would break, and I'd go, oh, we seem to have a technical problem. Let's play some music. So I would do a show. And after a while, the general manager said, I know what you're doing. And if you want a job that badly, you can do the news on the weekends. And so the reason I told this long story is that when like Cortez, when you've burned your ships and you only have one choice, that you have to go, And so that sort of spirit of risk is what caused me to say yes to when I was working at CBS News, yes to going to sports. I knew nothing about sports. Yes to going to Entertainment Tonight. They only gave me a 13-week contract. So what the heck? And then yes to starting the radio show, because what's the worst that could happen? I could be in the tent under an overpass. That's it. Sorry for the long story.
No, that was great, because I mean it kind of gives a sense to your sort of all in mentality, but also the fact that you've sort of survived the tent under the overpass, and so it's like you said, what's the worst that can happen? You've already been there.
Yeah, and I also I don't listen, stuff has happened to me, and and again, it's a longer story, and I tell it on stage, but I got healed supernaturally. I had faith for the doctors to heal me from cancer, and they did a great job and all that, but the cancer kept coming back. Finally, my wife and I sort of we were in a radiation oncology place underground at Cedars-Sinai, and we were being lectured by the guy. He wanted to firebomb. He wanted to carpet bomb my pelvis, and I would lose this function, that function, and when he got to, you're going to lose sexual function. We said, okay, we're done. And I don't know if you've ever seen the 300, but when King Leonidas turns to his queen, when the Persian messengers come in and they pretty much wants to enslave them, and he's trying to make the decision as to what to do. He looks back at his bride, and his bride sort of gives the eyebrow flash, and he knows that he's not going to do that, and he takes his foot and he kicks the messenger down the well, which of course starts this huge war. That's the look that my wife and I had at the moment. The doctor was saying, this is the only thing that's going to kill your cancer. And at that moment, based on a scripture that I have tattooed on my arm here, Mark 11:23, I knew that I was healed. And at that moment, believing that God had provided healing for me, I was not only healed from cancer, I was healed from arthritis and everything else, back pain, everything else. And so that that knowledge, right, I believe is the same thing that was deep within me when amazing things were happening to me, and all I had to do was just sort of say, okay, I'm gonna take a chance, and God, you'll be with me. I wasn't thinking about it then. But looking back on it, it's like, wow, this could, I mean, I was in a tent, homeless, pumping gas, and 3 years later, I'm anchoring the news at WCBS TV in New York City, right next to Walter Cronkite's, studio. So you tell me what happened. It wasn't, I'm an average guy. It wasn't talent. It really wasn't.
Well, but that actually brings up a point. Part of what the foundation, the TOCA does is we try to encourage and sort of mentor young up-and-coming talent. We have a talent competition, and then we take those kids who win and we put them in, sort of mentor them with other professional touring artists. All the artists that I talk to on this podcast, I asked them, what advice would you give to a young person who sort of looks up to you and says, wow, if he did it, I can do it. What advice would you give to, or do you give to young people?
Yeah, it's so different now, right? Because and good and bad. The good part is that, like, let's use Justin Bieber, for example, who became a YouTube sensation and that ended up launching his career, is that you actually have a way for people to find you. So you don't really, it's like what Macklemore said, no, I don't need a record company. Record companies are not completely necessary. I mean, I got turned down by every record company, and PBS said, hey, we'll take a chance on you, John. But so there are many more opportunities. The problem is that there's so much music out there now because it's so much easier to express yourself, whether you've got GarageBand or Logic Pro or Pro Tools or any of that stuff. And you can learn how to play an instrument, over the weekend on YouTube, which is incredible, So it's amazing what's going on. The problem is when you're like, okay, I'm going to make an album and then everybody's going to buy it, right? And it's going to be in the stores or it's going to be on Amazon. Back in the day, it was at the stores, and that's the way I felt. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing, no way, I don't have nobody. I'm the guy who reads the celebrity birthdays on Entertainment Tonight. How are they going to all of a sudden think that I'm a musician? So you have to find a creative way. And a great book, by the way, is Jack Trout's Differentiate or Die. And it's like, how am I going to find a creative way for people to find me? And I would say the number one thing to do is, whether you're going to do, and you can do it on Facebook or YouTube now, is playing live, because the two parts. One is playing live, because if you can show people that you're a real musician with passion and they catch that passion, they're going to follow you, anywhere. So don't start it with, okay, I need an Instagram following, I need a YouTube following, I need a Facebook following. But the other part of this, which I think is really huge, is a message. One of the most popular songs I ever wrote with James Ingram and Carter Cathcart was a song called "Give Me Forever I Do." And the reason that song did so well and ended up as a #1 song on AC radio was because it was a wedding song, and so it had purpose. So if you're writing songs that are with the intention of it being hooky, that's one thing. But it is a lot of garbage out there. But if you're writing a song, that's why, a lot of these gospel artists do so well, because obviously there's purpose in that music. So if you think, what's the purpose of this song? Does it have a message? And am I being useful? Because if you can help somebody, they'll follow you for forever.
Yeah.
And that can be it can be a love song. It can be anything. But if it's just, here's a hooky synth line. There's a hooky synth line in "Sweet Dreams are made of this," but they're also, the lyrics are cool, So that's what I would say. And the other thing is, I always say to, even younger people that you're talking about, but I always have moms and dads asking me after concerts, when should I get my kid into learning an instrument? And what I always say is, piano, voice, guitar, ukulele, whatever it is, trumpet. Take trumpet out. It's all great, but they really need to sit in a band, or they really need to play a trumpet or a flute or something. Sit in an orchestra or a band, marching band, and collaborate, because there's a chapter called Dr. Wagner in my book, and it's all about how everything I learned about focused, intensive practice and setting goals, I learned in the band. Because when there's competition in there, there's blending in, there's math going on, it's all there. And sadly, a lot of the elementary and junior high and high schools, they don't have music anymore.
Well, and it's sort of a conversation I've had before with other artists is back in the day, there was the record store or magic store or whatever you wanted to get into. There was a place to go to meet other people, to brainstorm, to sort of form a bond with other performers. Now a lot of the kids sit in front of their laptops and their computers, and they miss that camaraderie and that brainstorming and just learning those lessons like you talk about. So joining a band, even if you have one at school or whatever, I think is brilliant, because it does sort of bring people together and gives you those life lessons, not only for performing but in general.
I agree. Austin Kleon wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist. And you're like, oh gosh, what do I really want to steal what other people are doing? And it's a brilliant book, because it talks about, it was like a magic marker underneath everything that I've done by accident. And that is, I've always pointed at people and tried to reach where they are. So whether it was Walter Cronkite or Chuck Scarborough, who anchored the news in New York, or a guy named Doug Limerick, who was on the radio, or it was everybody from Rachmaninoff to David Foster, the great piano player and producer. And you look at them and you focus on them and you try to emulate. You can do this on YouTube now, right?
Right.
And you try to emulate everything that they're doing, and you meditate on what they're doing. And you'll never really, unless you're going to plagiarize what somebody is writing, which I don't recommend because I was already a criminal. You become who you are, but look at trying to strive for what they've accomplished. And so you move your mentors around, right, in everything that you do. And it's a great book, but it's all about that. And it just, because it keeps moving the bar up. And what if you really want to look at old school, vintage, analog way for success, you look at the Beatles, because everybody looks at the Beatles and they're like, oh yeah, they were just like this. They were these pop superstars. Yeah, but nobody really talks about anymore all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bars they played just in and around Liverpool before they even got to their first single, before they got signed for anything. They were ready. They were found ready. So that's another one of the tips I always like to say is you got to be, if you're pointed towards success and you have goals and somebody says, wait, I like this kid, I'm going to put them on stage or whatever, you better have practiced your instrument, or your speech or whatever. You got to be found ready when that opportunity comes.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Well, I don't want to miss talking about the Acoustic Christmas. You have so many albums. You've done so much great work. What inspired you to take on Christmas?
Christmas drives me crazy, because in order to record a Christmas album, you have to do it in June and July, and it's really hot when you're doing that. Also, when you're on stage, if you mess up a word, and it's one of the reasons why people like Sting and Elton John and even Frank Sinatra had a teleprompter, because everybody knew their songs so well. They didn't want to. So it's like, oh, the weather outside is frightful and the fire is so nice. No, everybody knows that you just messed that up. But I had a great life growing up with music and Christmas, and so there are so many that my biggest problem is there's so many Christmas songs to choose from. It's like, okay, am I going to do Let It Snow or Bring a Torch, Jeanette, Isabella? Does anybody know what that is? So it's also what you're going to see on stage is pretty much what you'll see if you were to come here at Thanksgiving or Christmas to my house where I'm sitting now, is that my son Gib, who'll be with us on this concert run, he plays ukulele and he's also a comedian. Prima, my daughter, who's 25, she is a ballet and modern dancer. She'll be dancing with us. And then we're not bringing the grandkids, but that's what it is that there's in this house, there's a piano about every 60 feet, or some sort of instrument. And so you're going to see sort of Christmas in my living room on stage. And we do some spoken word stuff. We do a thing called Old School Christmas. I want an old school Christmas. I want to go back in time when the TV stopped at midnight and Coke was a dime. It's like, so it's really a baby boomer Christmas, if you know what I mean.
That sounds amazing. From an artist standpoint, you're up on stage, you pouring your heart out. What do you want the audience to walk away with after they've seen this show?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's Nietzsche said centuries ago that as long as you have a why, you can endure any how, right? And so that's what I'm always thinking. I'm saying, why should people come to this show? And I've really stopped doing what I did when I first got my first PBS special out there, which was, play 15 songs and move on, and say, hey, I wrote this song when I was in the and I really have a conversation with the audience, and so it's much different. And I'm always thinking, what do I want people to come away with, like you asked, and I'm not Elton John, I'm not Billy Joel, I'm not David Foster. I play at my level, but I also have some life experiences that you can learn from, and including stuff where it's like, I would never do that, so I think my life is going to be a whole lot better. And so when people are looking at me at 67 years old on stage, and my audience is women 45 plus who have dragged their husbands to a John Tesh concert, they're looking at me and they're going, with a little practice, I could do this. And that's really the message that I like to send is it's true, In fact, at 45, 50, 60 is the perfect time, for example, to learn how to play piano, because you actually care about it and you don't have the minute mind or egg timer on your piano like I did when I was 6 years old, and it's ticking away, and now you can't watch 60 Minutes anymore because the ticking drives you crazy.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to actually meeting you in person when you come out in December. And I know that we have VIP tickets as well, where people can actually see your sound check and actually get to meet and greet you, which would be I would recommend highly. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and it's hey, it's been great therapy for me. I feel much better now. I don't have stage fright anymore.
Oh, good. And again, it's Friday, December 6th this year at 8 p.m. at the Armstrong Theater, John Tesh's Acoustic Christmas. John, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.